So we'll start then with the lectures, and I will give you some overview about the exciting work we are doing in the last few years at my lab and Tel Aviv University, which deals with the blue economy, and specifically one branch of this blue economy, how we see the transition from agriculture to silviculture in the coming years. Of course, the question here is, why do we want to do it? So why there is any thought, any idea to move from agriculture to silviculture? And the simple answer to this is the water issue. So just to give you the some overview and example why the water issue is important and critical, what we see here on the left is the Sea of Galilee, Yam of Kinneret in Israel, which all total volume is about 4 cubic kilometers. And we as a society globally every year use about 900 lakes of Seas of Galilee like this. So we withdraw 3,600 cubic kilometers of fresh water for multiple human uses. So the uses can be in agriculture, they can be in municipality, can be in industry, but we use a lot of water. And water is a scarce resource. So what we see here is the map of water scarcity globally. And in red are the countries where water is a big issue. So there is not enough water for the basic needs. In blue are the regions where there is little or no water scarcity. So, but if you overlap the population density and the red colors on these maps, you will see that in most places where people live, there is a huge scarcity of water. So fresh water is an issue. And the largest use of this water, as I mentioned here, is the terrestrial agriculture. So we withdraw fresh water to irrigate lands, to grow plants mostly for the food consumption. Now, what happens with the population? Population grows very, very fast, and there are several waves which we can see which deal with the population growth. So we look many years ago, we'll see that the population grew, and then there was some stabilization, and then again there was sudden bust in the population, and then again was stabilization, and then once again we had a very rapid growth in population and stabilization. And the question, of course, what will happen afterwards? But these rapid growths were associated with some evolutions or revolutions. In most cases, they were evolutions, such as tool use in agriculture, and then the agriculture itself, domestication of plants, and afterwards there was the fossil fuel usages. Now, what will happen afterwards, we don't know. Yeah, the population can stabilize and can go down, or maybe there will be some novel thing which will be coming. We still don't know what it will be, which will enable human population to grow sustainably. In our view, in our idea, one of these directions might be the silviculture, or which are part of the global blue economy, which means that we will use the oceans as we use the land today for the production of the biomass of feedstock. We also can use the ocean. What we can do in the ocean sustainably, we can grow biomass or ocean plants, or in the simple words, the seaweed. So we can grow the seaweed, and here the vision is that we grow seaweeds, which absorb nutrients from the ocean. We use solar energy for the conversion, and then once we produce the biomass, we can convert it to multiple products, such as food, biofuel, platform chemicals, plastics. I will give you some examples. Most importantly, we also need, and we will produce new technologies to do it, because today nobody knows how to grow biomass in the ocean in very large space and how to process it. And all this together will also lead to the generation of novel jobs. So we also see the whole branch of employment to be developed there, because we will need a lot of new tools and new skills to enable this biomass production. Just to give you the example about the differences, here is 1 kilogram of plant protein, which can be produced as it is produced today with soybeans. And in this case, we need about 4,000 liters of drinking water to produce 1 kilogram of protein derived from soybean. And these 4,000 liters are just used in the irrigation during the agriculture of soybeans. Alternatively, we can extract proteins from seaweeds. And here are some examples where the seaweeds can be grown in the ocean, and there is no requirement for fresh water. at all. So if we mentioned that the water was an issue, drinking and fresh water was an issue, here we see that just by transferring the plant protein production from soy to seaweeds, we can eliminate about 4,000 liters of drinking water used in the agriculture. So the seaweeds are produced already today. So here are the examples of large-scale cultivation of nori. This algae is mostly used today in sushi, and this is in China. So there are plantations in the sea of this biomass, but it's still tiny amount if we compare it for what is produced today in the regular crops. So we talk about 5 orders of magnitude less of biomass produced in seaweeds in the sea than the terrestrial biomass. So which means that there is still a huge gap which could be filled in the coming years in growing more and more biomass in the sea. So we do see that there is a very massive growth. The seaweed biomass production almost doubles every 5 years, but still this so far away from terrestrial biomass sources that it's a lot of gaps and technologies which needed to be developed there. So we started with the research a few years ago with mapping the large areas in the sea where the biomass could be produced. So each pixel on this global map is 500 by 500 kilometers. So we talk about really large areas where the biomass can be produced. So we applied certain combination of seaweed metabolomic studies. So we know physiologically what is the requirement for seaweed to grow, nutrients, light, temperatures, and all the rest. So we built the model of the virtual seaweed. And we combined this with the climate data for mapping of these areas. So we have real climate data there, which enables us to develop models for the prediction where this biomass could be produced. So that was a quite fundamental work, which shows that where the future fields of this new biomass will be coming from. And the outcome of this work was to map the potential of seaweeds in the next 10 or 15 years to provide biomass and what is the actual scale, so why it will be important for the society. So we talk about the 10.9 ton dry weight of biomass per year produced, so which is equivalent to about 18 exajoules. So this is a very significant portion of energy, just solar energy captured in the biomass, which could be used in multiple applications, such as transportation fuels. So we just calculated this can replace about 20% of fossil fuel in the transportation sector. It also could provide somewhere between 5 to 25% of the predicted plant protein demand by 2054. And again, if we talk about the reduction of the meat production and the associated with it emissions, we talk about a fourth of this protein could become from the marine sources, can provide sustainable acetone, butanol, and other basic chemicals for the industry, and can displace natural gas combustion and so forth. So there is a lot of contribution which is actually significant in numerical significantly, which could be achieved if we are able to grow the biomass in those areas. So what we are doing, so here is an example of the left of the modern agriculture field, and you don't see almost any people there, maybe somebody there driving the tractor, but a lot of things are done or robotically or mechanically or automatically. So this is me growing seaweeds in Tel Aviv, and we are doing it a lot of work manually, and this is how the seaweeds are actually produced today. And in our vision that in the coming years, the seaweed cultivation will move from a lot of manual work towards automation and robotic systems. So we will actually drive the cost of the production down this way. So this is an example of our experimental field in Tel Aviv near the power station, and installation of our small cages in the sea, how they look like. And what in this study, what we were able to map was the annual growth rates and the annual production of the biomass of seaweed per specific unit area. So it's quite exciting. So we see that we did the measurements every 2 weeks, and what we see that there are some fluctuations, but definitely there is a season somewhere in Israel between January to end of June where we can produce a lot of biomass, which is here. Then in the summer, so in Israel, it's very hot, also for seaweeds, so they don't like it and they don't grow in August, September, but then from October, we'll start back the production. So and eventually we can reach almost 10 months a year of continuous harvesting of the biomass. So this is spectacular if you compare it to multiple crops. Yes, usually you plant something and then you get it several months afterwards, but you can use maybe 1 or 2 cropping per year, not more. Here we were talking about 54 harvests per year of the biomass. So the seaweed also are able to capture carbon. So we measured that we're talking about 800 gram carbon captured per square meter per year. And we compared it to multiple plants globally. And we actually showed that just very simple seaweed production in Tel Aviv has a very respectful carbon capture potential in comparison to multiple crops, both in our region and others. So just to give you the example, the Middle East crops which could be grown here, we're talking about 290 gram carbon per square meter per year. This is 4 times less than what we achieved with seaweeds with a very simple hand-based tools. So as I mentioned, we look towards automation and mechanization. This is an exciting example of the cage. So Alex Chimodanov, one of my scientists in my group, actually developed. So, and we thought about the idea that we can take the greenhouse idea, and in greenhouse on shore, in terrestrial crops, we control the environment and we are able to produce much more crops. And we actually build the greenhouse for the offshore environment to grow the seaweed in the greenhouse in the sea. And this is the prototype of the system. We actually have the cage where we can control inside of it many, not all, but many of the cultivation parameters. So this is a big fish, but this is actually Alex who built the cage. And before the installation, and here's our installation in the experimental slot. So we have the cage where we can control the carbon supply, we can control some fluxes of nitrogen, we can control the mixing regime of the seaweeds, and this actually allowed us to increase almost by the order of magnitude the growth rates and the yield produced volumetrically from the same surface area in comparison to the non-mixed cages. And in addition to this, what you see here on the left, these red dots, is the production of the seaweed in this mixed cage that we were able to prolong the cultivation season for another month and a half. And in agriculture, this is very, very significant. So now in terms of 10 months, you can harvest them almost 11 and a half months a year. So the next question we addressed, and this is the major part of the blue economy, of course, was what do we do with the seaweeds? And here Meganat came, and the idea was to take the seaweeds and to actually take and separate them into multiple useful for industry and specifically food industry products. And the protocol we developed, we actually were able to separate the seaweed into starch, lipids, certain polymers. So one in this case, proteins, cellulose, and salts. And it's quite exciting. So we have about 92% of the biomass separated into ingredients which can be used in the food industry. So no waste, and almost all ingredient which comes out can be integrated immediately in the existing processes in the food and chemical industry. So here are some examples of products which can be obtained out of it. We have starch. Starch can be converted into biochar. So we actually have char for long-term carbon storage, for example. Cellulose can be used directly to make paper or can be modified to get the nitrocellulose, which is an ignition material. You can take the starch and ferment it to get the ethanol, so multiple applications. Another approach developed by Supratin Ghosh was to take the ulva, which is the same green seaweed we grew, break it down with a thermal process, and then to find the specific bacteria which are able to take the sugars which are released and convert them into the polymer, in this case polyhydral canolat, which can be actually used as a replacement for polyesters for the plastic industry. Again, this is a very pure specific polymer which can be immediately integrated in the polyester industry, which is completely biodegradable. And again, all this process, we didn't use any fresh water at all. So we grew the seaweed in the sea, we did the hydrolysis in the seawater, and then the fermentation Supratin developed was also done in the salty water. So zero fresh water during the whole process from the biomass to the polymers which can be used in the plastic industries. So here are some additional examples. So the tools we developed where we can take the seaweed biomass, apply certain electric fields on it and extract the proteins. What you see on the right is the white powder of seaweed protein isolate, which eventually can compete with soy isolate or whey proteins or other which are currently available today, but this coming from the sea, again, with the zero water and zero land footprints. So we also tested if these new proteins are safe, so any potential allergies which will be coming out. So we have a whole branch of research actually happening these days together with the partners at the Mayor Hospital to see if seaweed and seaweed proteins can cause allergies. So if anybody here is from Israel and want to volunteer in the clinical trial ongoing on this, you are most welcome to be in touch with me, and we will be more than happy to recruit you in the trial happening these days. Another product I mentioned just briefly before was the starch, but think about it. Starch for thousands of years is produced with the terrestrial crops. So we grow rice, we grow potato, we grow wheat, a major source of starch. But what about getting starch from the sea? So, and we were, I think, the first group who actually published the work where we can take the green seaweed and we identified the starch granules inside them. And once the seaweed is produced in the sea and you extract the starch granules, eventually you can have the starch coming from the sea. Again, we have started with the green seaweed, which if you go in Israel and Tel Aviv beach, you will see it almost all the year round. Certain processes, and at the end we get starch, white starch granules, which are very similar to rice starch in this case. So just to show you about the potential, I was talking about one seaweed only, about green ones, which name is ulva, very famous in our lab, but there is a whole huge diversity of seaweed biomass, which is still to be explored. So just on the left here, I put some examples of our collection of seaweed, which can be grown and assembled and studied in Israel. If you go to the beaches and different types of the year, you will find different seaweeds and different species. Find a method to grow them, and you will see a huge diversity. So we just put an example of diversity of sugars. The most famous sugar everybody here, I guess, knows is the glucose, but there are many, many other sugars which are used by food industry and in pharmaceuticals. So we have a huge diversity of sugars. Each color here represents a different sugar type. And then if you just multiply it by the current cost of those sugars in the market, you can actually get some initial economic analysis of how much the seaweeds can be, what is the economic worth of those seaweeds. So this is our direct connection to the blue economy. So which profit or which can be actually generated if you just take this biomass, separate the sugars, and only sell the sugars without all other ingredients I mentioned, such as protein, starch, cellulose, and so forth. So I just want to thank all the collaborators. You'll see in this research we participate. There are many people from Tel Aviv University with whom we work together, the collaborators from Germany. We have other collaborators in Israel, and a lot of local and foreign and international funding agencies who actually were also excited by this idea that seaweeds can be used and they can in the future play a significant role in the new economies, such as bioeconomy. So this is a very, very scary slide, I know, but the idea here is just to show what can actually be produced in the future if we develop completely the seaweed biorefinery. So we have the seaweed here. So this is the biomass we grow in the sea. We combine them with the solar fields to make the solar energy. And these are all the exciting outputs which we can get here. We can get the tap water. So we don't use fresh water for the cultivation agriculture. We produce fresh water in this process. We can make bioplastic, we can make food, animal feed, liquid marine fuel, some materials for the agriculture, biostimulants, proteins, and so forth. So it's a lot of proteins, a lot of products which can produce out of the seaweeds if and when we develop all these systems. So if anybody here is interested to learn tools on how to develop new products and new processes, I believe that C is the key, and you're welcome to join us.
Thank you, Alex.
So we'll take questions now or later. What's the plan?
We have one question about the lecture. So what implications does the shift towards biomass-related diet have on the actual food consumers will eat? How do we tackle the resistance that populations may have to changing their diet and inspire real behavioral change?
It's a great question. Thank you. So now there are 3 or 4 big European projects happening which relate to this question, because the future food consumption is viewed to be very different from what we see now. And we talk about insect proteins, we talk about mushroom proteins, we talk about bacteria protein, seaweed protein, and so forth. And so we see that there is a gradual change which happens also with the perception of population about these new sources of food. So this change doesn't happen immediately. There will be no revolution in this case. So at least this is what we know today, that this will not happen, that tomorrow everybody wake up and say, okay, I will not eat meat anymore, we'll switch to insects. There will be gradual change, and just people will, because of the environmental issues, because of the environmental considerations, people will probably reduce or switch the diet. So this is one approach. Another approach is that the health-related aspects of this, that the more scientific evidence we have that new types of food will have health and beneficial for people, people will adopt new types of diets. So I think that I will take questions maybe afterwards, and Vered, yes, I'm welcome to continue.
So thank you, Alex, for sharing with us this very interesting research. I will take the next 15 minutes or so to talk with you about innovation in circular systems, which is part of my research lab work. I will give you some examples from research that we do here, but also the bigger picture of what's going on in Israel with examples, because you know, a lot of the international program is focused about the Israel and the unique situation that we have here. For those that are not familiar with the circular economy, so we have today large organizations that basically try to promote the notion of stopping this linear system when we make, we use, and then we throw it, and we lose on the way with many inefficiencies and loss of materials, energy, and water, and moving into this concept of circular economy, saying that everything should be very efficient, and you know, if the Alan MacArthur Foundation is I think the most leading organization today that try to give the umbrella concept for that. We are looking basically on biological cycles and material and technical cycles, and we say everything should be either made back to nature, or that we can keep using it for many times without any losses, or very close to zero losses. And we talk about this concept for many years now, but in reality, we see that it's really hard to practice it. Okay, so a lot of the research that is going on in this area is about how we can innovate and create circularity in a more innovative way, and how we can really move industry, governments, and other organizations into the practice of circularity. So as you might know, Israel is known for its innovation DNA and you know, the startup nation, and we always think about how we can move and bring innovation into the table, even within circularity, which is a quite new concept in Israel. I would say not more than 10 years that we are talking about it, and only the last few years that we actually try to practice it, and we are still far from it. There is room, a lot of room for innovation. So I don't have the time, you know, I can do a full hour lecture just about this slide on where we can have innovation, but as you can see, we can and we need to have it in every place along the supply chain. So from the very early design of products, materials, infrastructure, all the way to the production, the use phase, the end of life, and then also what are we doing with the materials afterwards and the product. That with all of that, we must have a lot of IT support to be able to really communicate information and make the right decisions on the way. Israel do have some of it already happening, but usually on small scale and still in early stage. What I will do now is I will tell you my view on why Israel is interesting case studies. And again, if you join us on our international program, you will learn a lot about Israel. But first of all, we are a very small country with poor on our own natural resources. So we bring everything from abroad, okay? We are kind of operating like an island, at least on energy and materials. Unfortunately, we still don't have open borders with our neighbors to share and balance energy and materials. We are located in an area which is of high risk to suffer from climate change impact. Although we might contribute little, we're going to suffer from it a lot. And we are very young to the concept of circularity, efficiency, industrial ecology. But on the other hand, innovation is in our DNA. And right now we are seeing the ecosystem being created in Israel for supporting circularity transition. And this is really exciting times research-wise, but also practitioner-wise. So I will give you now a few examples of research projects that we have here related to innovation and circularity. The first one is about textiles recycling. So, you know, textile is a big problem all over the world. Most of the countries do not regulate textile waste. It's going to come in the next few years, but at the moment it's quite voluntary to do something with this stream of waste. We here, in collaboration with the lab of Professor Adas Maman in engineering, we are having a student looking at, can we produce nanocellulose from textiles waste, basically taking the waste and sort it away, collect it, sort it, take only the cotton and all of the natural fibers to our operation, and all the other synthetics to think what else we can do with that, and especially specifically focus on the ability to extract using strong acids, the nanocellulose from there, and convert it to a recycled material that then industry can use. So we treat the waste on one end, and then we also create new materials for the market. At the moment, this technology is tested in the lab. It already passed few rounds of technology tests, and we found out that from environmental perspective, the first part of the acid treatment is the hotspot related to environmental impact, and therefore we try to focus on improving that part. So using less acid to get more nanocellulose. We have other technologies that are available, and we compare to them, we benchmark to them. And the idea is that you do this environmental assessment on a very early stage technology development, right? So it's kind of a loop. We're looking where can we create, if this technology is relevant for this approach, but then of course how we can already optimize it as we work on the technology development. And it's not just about creating the nanocellulose itself, it's also about what can we do with the other types of waste that are generated within the recycling process, right? So it requires us to look not only on, oh, we're doing great, we're taking care of this textiles waste, also we are producing a lot of waste within the recycling process, and can we in advance think about them and find way to deal with them. So if it's the acid, maybe we can get it back to be a fertilizer. If it's water or so other solids, what can we do in order not to landfill them? And of course, if by accidents we do have still either fibers which are not cotton, can we separate them in the process and bring them back into, for example, PET fibers, to bring them back into recycling processes that are relevant for other industries. So this is very innovative as a process, but that's not enough, because if we invest all the technology and time and money to develop this, but we don't really know if anyone can use in the Israeli economy our recycled material, then we didn't really create circularity. We did treat the textiles waste, but still there is no circularity. So the second part of such research will be, okay, what is exactly this nanocellulose that we're able to produce, and who in the Israeli industry first, because we want local circular economy, can actually use that material. And we find out that it's very limited at the moment, and then we can think about what is applicable to our economy and what can be going out, you know, to the European market or other industries, at least in order to close the loop, even if it's not local. So we combine in sets of methods, of course, the technology itself, which is very innovative, but also the supporting analysis of life cycle thinking about the recycling technology and about who will use such material in industrial context. Another project that we are doing here is involving treating illegal waste, but using technological aspects in order to do an analysis. So we use drones and image processing in order to understand what lies on the ground. We have a lot of illegal waste, unfortunately, in Israel. We're talking about more than 2 million tons of illegal waste in a year. And this is an example of mapping that we did in few illegal waste dumps, and we can actually identify the type of material sitting within that dump, and then we can start play it with numbers. We know the volume and we know the area, and then we can convert it into a weight, and then we can play with numbers. We know the economic parameters for those materials. Is it worth to recycle it? How much we can save if we clean the area? how much it will cost us to treat it, what is the price we can get for recycled material for those different materials, and then we can scale it up into the national level and say, okay, this is the composition of the waste in those illegal waste dumps, and what happens if we clean up the entire country, what will be the economic and environmental implications for that. And the technology, using the drones technology, the image processing, and then putting on the top the economic and the environmental numbers is what creates basically the innovation here. I now want to give you a few examples of industry and especially startups that we work with to show you, we have close connection with industry here. So Solutum, for example, is a startup company in Israel to try to tackle the problem of plastic waste by inventing a material that is completely dissolving in water. Okay, so think about the sea of plastic that you might heard of in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, then suddenly all of this will disappear and just dissolve in the water. So as they are still in developing stages, and unfortunately we are under NDA, so we cannot provide a lot of information, but just to give you an example, this is a project that students were working on for a full semester, trying to help Solutum to estimate the environmental benefits of their technology using life cycle thinking, a lot of data collection, working close with them on understanding the data and understanding how are they doing compared to other more advanced, more mature technologies, or if it's the traditional plastic like PE, or if it's even the bio-based materials like PLA, for example. Another example for collaboration that we have with industry is about electronic waste. So this is really new to facilities that were established in Israel recently. Actually, their CEO is a former student of our program, and we keep collaborating on research. So to the left, you see a new facility for electric motors recycling, employing people with disabilities. And on the right, it's really, sorry, that is in Hebrew, but this is just from a few days ago when they announced that they're going to create a new facility here for lithium batteries and electric vehicle batteries recycling. Actually, a consortium of a few industries that realize that we need the materials, we need the chemicals. There is enough volume that's going to be created here in the near future, and to get ready for that in advance. And we do a lot of research related to electronic waste on the processor side, but also, as someone asked, about the consumer side, because we need consumer participation in that in order to really be successful. Last, I want to talk a bit about consumers. Okay, in my lab, we do work on production side, technology side, but also on consumption side. Industrial ecology look at everything together holistically. So regarding circularity and specifically waste management, if we disregard our consumer, we are only seeing part of the picture. The recent COVID pandemic brought us very interesting insights. So in the first year of COVID, packaging waste went up 37%, mainly because of online and packages waste that got up higher. E-waste doubled, so electronic waste doubled, probably because people were just having time to clean up their houses. Also, since they worked remotely, they needed newer equipment and better equipment and upgraded if it's their cell phones and if it's their routers and computers. So that all adds up. And just an interesting counterintuitive example, in Tel Aviv itself, waste generation actually dropped 25%. And the reason for that is that basically, in Tel Aviv, many people just commuting to work, but they don't live in the city. And when they stop commuting to work, the overall amount of waste dropped, but it increased in other places where they live. Okay, so there is a trade-off here, and not every city actually saw the same trend. We had research very early in the pandemic looking at the stated pre and post-COVID behavior that people were saying they do or they will do, and this is an example of a research that we had with a survey with people during the first lockdown, showing that people that already recycled before the pandemic are most likely to even to at least do the same or to even increase that behavior. So it's related to recycling, but also related to actually reducing consumption. We also looked at all kinds of mechanisms to intervene with information, providing information about maybe the connection between the pandemic, climate change, or other environmental risks, and to see how this affect people perception and willingness to change behavior. Of course, this is all stated, so we still, need to test what happened in practice. It's one thing to say, it's another thing to actually do it. And this brings us to questions like, are we going to see change in beliefs, attitudes, and behavior of people, right? Are we going to be able to maintain some of the good practices that came up in the COVID, so working from home, what will be the consequences if we partially continue with that, for example? Of course, everything related to mobility and traffic and the change in the way we go to work. We saw the 13% move from public transport to private transport during the COVID. So this will have a lot of implications. And finally, from our perspective on materials and industrial ecology, what does it mean from the aspect of urban metabolism, recycling flows, how they will change when certain flows go up and certain goes down? And of course, what does it mean if we'll change the way we consume travel, the way we consume food, mobility, and other related categories? I want to finish by saying that we work closely here with the industry, but also with government and NGOs. Specifically on the topic of circularity, the Ministry of Environmental Protection came up last year with a waste strategy for 2030, circular economy strategy for 2050, and this is unfortunately the fourth program that the ministry is doing for Israel in the last 15 years. But this, taking forward a lot of the concepts that we talk about in research and academia for a few years now and trying to implement them. We can see that there is a lot of interest in different groups and stakeholders within the concept of circularity. We have here at school the Environmental Inspiration Forum, would bring the biggest companies in Israel along with NGOs to sit together and think about how we can solve some problems, specifically about circular economies, packaging in the food industry. So we are very central in that discussion here in Israel. And I want to finish by saying that although we are doing a lot and trying to promote it, we still have a lot more room for innovation, and especially Israel needs to focus on small-scale recycling technologies. We do have a leverage in IT, so our high-tech industry is very developed, as you might know, and I personally think we should think about IT tools that can help us to support the transition to circularity. We also need, and we do more work on indicators for local circularity measurements, right? So do we really progress on that, and how do you measure it, with what type of indicators? It's different level if it's economy-wise versus sector-wise versus a specific company. And finally, without the engagement of consumers and the end users, we are very limited in that transition, and therefore we do also complementary research there. And at the end of the day, part of our work is to really support and provide data for decision makers. So it could be managers within businesses, and it could be policymakers within the different government ministries. If anyone has questions, we can take now questions, or otherwise we will move into the program, description.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, I really liked your idea of recycling this e-waste. So, but my question is, like, there are so much hazard related to recycling of heavy metals involved in the batteries. So how you are dealing with, and how you are also dealing with the strict government regulations on recycling of heavy metals?
Yes, so of course, this is an important topic. That's why we don't want to landfill them. So all of those metals and heavy metals don't leach into the underground in our water. And therefore, we need more technology about how to do it more efficient. And also on the other end, to make sure that we really collect a lot of that waste and it doesn't get into the landfill. And this is in support of technology and policy making, and also education of the public about the hazards of that. On the technological side, we work closely with, as I showed you, this facility, for example, for recycling. So they are an official recycler under the ministry there, and they must show that they stand in all of the standards, and of course that they don't send the remainings of that to to other communities around the world. And we see a lot of devastating pictures of people cooking in their backyards all kind of parts of electronics just to extract a bit of metals and income. So this not happen, it's a long process of policy, of NGOs, and of course of research to make it more safe, and on the other end to clean up those equipment and up equipment. So that's of course a different level, because it goes back to the design, and then you need to also create regulation that will make sure that the design initially is with all of these less materials. So it's a complex, of course, process.
Thank you.
Any questions for Alex or for me? So we really just wanted to try to share with you a bit of the leading research that we are doing in our school. And if there are no other questions, we can move into the program description. Anyone for questions? Okay, so let me go to the last part. So I'm here also in the act of being the head of our MA Environmental Studies program, the international program. For those of you that are not familiar with Tel Aviv, so we are the biggest university in Israel with over 30,000 students, and within that community, we have more than 2,000 international students along the different international programs that we have here. The university is actually putting a lot of effort and focus on the international visibility, and investing a lot in relationship between different universities and student exchanges, and also, of course, rigorous and excellence in research and teaching. We have 125 schools and departments. You can see here the statistics, with more than 400 labs and 9 different faculties. And actually what's very unique on our school and our department is that we collaborate with all of those faculties. So we have different faculty members that are associated with different faculties, and many times, especially in research, we actually collaborate, and students many times have joint mentors from different faculties. Our university is also leading on many different aspects, and universities are ranked on different things. Again, I'm not going to read it out loud, but you can see that especially in innovation and VC related funding later on, and the number of patents, and percentage of females, and in general, it's the first choice of students within Israel. It's, of course, the standards are also very high. Of course, on research, we are very much focused on high-level research, and the way we are cited, and our research is being seen all over the world. Specifically, our program is very unique because it's a one-year accelerated program with 3 semesters. Everything is taught in English. The program itself is very multidisciplinary, and trying to really bring you to the table the complexity and the challenges, the multiple challenges that we have today. We do touch on multiple topics during the teaching program, and it's also very important for us that you learn hands-on on what's going on in Israel. So we also have, besides teaching, also some tours and other activities that can bring you those opportunities to really blend and see what's going on here. We do have a mix of international and Israeli students, and one of the unique things is that it's really, they are coming from unique backgrounds and diverse backgrounds. So it's not that everyone is environmental engineer or learned ecology before. Actually, most of them are coming from social sciences and other and education and many different disciplines. And at the end of the day, that's what also creates the ability to understand the need for interdisciplinarity approach when you come to tackle environmental challenges. Last year, we had 26 students, for example, from 14 different countries. So it's quite diverse there. I will not go through the requirements in very details, but you can see the application requirements and everything related to cost and funding. So the idea is, you know, we are not restricted. Your undergrad work can be in any field. Okay, and Lee is is the best person to contact about the requirements and all of that details. You do need to have 2 letters of recommendation. At least one of them is academic, and also to submit your personal essay. And finally, on the funding side, there is actually some opportunities for scholarships. So we do a lot of effort on bringing that options, especially for students that are less less able to participate and to really have big and important diversity in the program. We do have, by the way, a very large international support system here at the university. So Lee is our manager for the program, but there are basically a full office that deals with Tau International that really provide great service to all of the international students. As I said, the teaching program itself is very diverse. We do have core classes that basically the idea is that you all come to the same level or to being on the same page. So kind of background courses that we believe everyone needs. Of course, that because you come from different backgrounds, some of you might have already a course in ecology, but not in food system, and some might be on policy and law, but not on business side. So we try to really set those core classes to be the minimum that we see that is a must to have. And then you have elective courses depending on your personal interest. This is complemented with field trips and the final project, which you are doing in the last semester. Overall, it's 38 credit points, and depending on your background, you might need to complete English classes and statistic class, which is not counted in the 38 credit points. Lee, did I miss something here?
No, you go through everything.
Okay, last thing is the internship program, which is very special and unique to our program. We are basically providing you with the opportunity to do a 4-month internship in one of the Israeli environmental organizations. This is a big program that we also offer to our Israeli students, and it's kind of like at the beginning, before the program starts, it's like a speed dating kind of event with different organizations, and the idea is that you are able to internship in one of those organizations and get the insight to a real work. Of course, it's still with NGOs and organizations, but we are actually going to expand it to industry and other organizations. So this is a very good opportunity to, especially if you're looking to stay around. And actually many of the students, that even the international students, they actually choose to stay a few more years after and work here locally with all of the opportunities that are here today. Which brings me to career opportunities and what can you do once you graduate from our program. So some students work in consulting, some work in companies that do have sustainability teams. Others choose to work with international NGOs or local NGOs and environmental educations. And this is just some examples of jobs that you can that you can get. And I get a lot of questions about that, and we see the market growing, and we actually believe that this is, you do have a potential to get very good jobs available in the next future, especially people with broader perspective on sustainability. We already have good air quality and water quality, or environmental engineers, but now many organizations requires to look much broadly on sustainability, and this is the type of education that you will get in our program. So I will leave you with that. This is 2 recent graduates of us, and you can read to yourself what they had to say. There is also more on our website. And with that, I will open it up for questions if you have. No questions? You're all registered already? Great.
Yes, I want to ask a question.
Yes, please.
Yes, I want to know if the English proficiency is important before application.
So actually, Lee, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you submit your application, and here we have a team that assess, it's a central team in the university that assess your level. And once we know that, we instruct you, if you get accepted to the program, what you require to complete, and there are conditions on that.
Yeah, because I'm from the country, activities, education activities in my country is done in English. So sometimes we don't have anything doing with the English proficiency. But looking at those material that you need to apply, I saw the English proficiency. So that's where my question drew from. If the English proficiency you need it first before application.
If I understood what you said, if your bachelor's degree was entirely in English, then you won't need to submit the English exam. But this is also be determined after you submit the transcript and diploma. So if your degree was entirely in English, you won't need to submit the English exam.
Okay, then you talk about international students having a scholarship. If a student happen to apply now, do they still have the opportunity to get a scholarship?
First, there is a few, I know of one that is still open for international students. You need to check on our website. I can send you a link to all the scholarship that are offered, and you need to check. It is a bit, late, but late for applying for scholarship. But if there are some that are open, then yes.
Okay. So how long can an application takes before responding to it, either to be accepted or denied?
Once you complete the application and submit all the documents that we ask, it can take between 3 to 6 weeks to receive an answer.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate. Toda rabah.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. Thank you so much for the facilitation, and I have really liked the content of the program, and yeah, it's really so exciting. My inquiry was on the area of thesis. Is the year of thesis also paid? Like if as a student you want to take it as well, is it paid? Is it paid?
You mean if there is a tuition for the thesis? If you pay tuition for the thesis year, is that the question?
Yes, madam.
Okay, so there is tuition, but the majority of the tuition you pay in the first year because you study the majority of the courses, almost all the courses. The second year of thesis, you take one course and you are charged on that. But there is also an option to receive a scholarship for the thesis. We will give like an elaborate explanation about the application for the thesis and also the scholarship options in the first semester of your studies, because the application for the thesis is done towards the end of the second semester of the studies. So you have time to like gather a research topic and to contact advisors. So you have time for that.
Okay, thank you so much. There is a sum up figure which was shared in the slides. Is that the only only figure that we're entitled to pay once an admission is given, or there are also other functional fees like which are meant to be paid.
So you mean is the 11,300 is the only cost, or you have additional costs?
Yeah, that's it. That's my question.
If you mean the tuition, that's the tuition for the majority of the courses for the 1 year. If you need to take a complementary course in statistics, there is an additional fee for that. Other than that, there are tuition for dorms, or if you are interested in the dorms, it's also, I can send you information about that, but it's in addition to the tuition for the program.
All right, noted. Thank you.
Okay, so if we have no more questions, we'll close the session now. And we want to encourage you, you're welcome to contact Alex and me and Lee with any questions that you have. We're very happy to help you. I think you're, let's see. Yeah, we'll put again, here is Lee's emails.
Yes, you also have my email. I sent you the invitation to the webinar, so you can just reply and I will be happy to help.
Yeah, and I'm also putting here again my email. You're welcome to, in the chat, you're welcome to contact me with any questions. Okay, so
Thank you all very much for
day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are, and take care and be safe. Hope to see you next year.
Bye-bye. Thank you all for joining.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.